Hello, everyone. Dr. Mad here. Let's get mad about Macbeth. So, in this lesson, we're going to look at two scenes, Act 3, Scene 2, and Scene 3. So, let's start by listening to the scenes, as always.
Is Banquo gone from court?
Aye, madam, but returns again tonight.
Say to the king, I would attend his leisure for a few words.
Madam, I will.
Naught's had, all spent, where our desire is got without content. 'Tis safer to be that which we destroy than by destruction dwell in doubtful joy. How now, my lord? Why do you keep alone of sorriest fancies your companions making, using those thoughts which should indeed have died with them they think on? Things without all remedy should be without regard. What's done is done.
We have scorched the snake, not killed it. She'll close and be herself, whilst our poor malice remains in danger of her former tooth. But let the frame of things disjoint, both the worlds suffer. We will eat our meal in fear, and sleep in the affliction of these terrible dreams that shake us nightly. Better be with the dead, whom we to gain our peace have sent to peace, than on the torture of the mind to lie in restless ecstasy. Duncan is in his grave. After life's fitful fever, he sleeps well. Treason has done his worst, nor steel, nor poison, malice domestic, foreign levy, nothing can touch him further.
Come on, gentle my lord. Sleek o'er your rugged looks. Be bright and jovial among your guests tonight.
So shall I, love, and so I pray be you. Let your remembrance apply to Banquo. Present him eminence both with eye and tongue. Unsafe the while that we must lave our honours in these flattering streams, and make our faces vizards to our heart, disguising what they are.
You must leave this.
Oh, full of scorpions is my mind, dear wife. Thou knowest that Banquo and his fiance lives.
But in them, nature's copies not etern.
There's comfort yet. They are assailable. Then be thou jocund. Ere the bat hath flown his cloistered flight, ere to black Hecate summons the shard-born beetle with his drowsy hums hath rung night's yawning peal, there shall be done a deed of dreadful note.
What's to be done?
Be innocent of the knowledge, dearest Chuck, till thou applaud the deed. Come, sealing night, scarf up the tender eye of pitiful day, and with thy bloody and invisible hand cancel and tear to pieces that great bond which keeps me pale. Light thickens, and the crow makes wing to the rooky wood. Good things of day begin to droop and drowse, whiles night's black agents to their praise do rouse. Thou marvelst at my words, but hold thee still. Things bad begun make strong themselves by ill.
Okay, so let's go back to the beginning. So, this is a short scene in which Macbeth reveals his fears about Banquo still being alive. And Lady Macbeth is also unhappy, but not yet as unhappy as Macbeth. As we know, as the play goes on, these two kind of change roles. But we'll talk about that more as we go through the play. So here we've got Lady Macbeth and a servant And Lady Macbeth asks if Banquo's gone out. And the servant says yes, but he'll be back tonight. And Lady says, say to the king, I would like to speak to him. So the servant says, okay. And then Lady Macbeth says that if we get what we want, but we're not content, we're not happy, then we've given everything, but not got anything actually. That it's better to be the one you've killed than be the killer, be the murderer, and be uh, and be unhappy. Okay, doubtful joy. So you're kind of happy because you've got what you wanted in terms of, in this case, becoming king, but you're restless. Okay, so it's not worth it. And then Macbeth comes in and she's saying, "Why do you keep to yourself? Your sad thoughts are not good company. You These sad thoughts that you're having should have should have died the moment that the person you killed died. Okay, so the moment you killed Duncan, these thoughts should have ended." And she's saying that anything that can't be changed, there's no point thinking about it. What's done is done. So this whole thing, this whole few lines here, don't need to worry too much about them. They're quite tricky. This quote is the main one, and that's quite simple, isn't it? I mean, we all say this sort of thing sometimes, that what's done is done. No point thinking about something that you can't now undo. And then Macbeth says these two lines here, and what he's saying is that they've killed King Duncan, but that's not the end of it because there's his sons, there's Banquo, so they're not yet safe. So yeah, that's what these two lines mean, that they're still in danger from these various other people. But then he says, so these lines here means here he's talking about nature, and here both the worlds he's talking about heaven and hell. Here and then these two lines he's saying, let nature fall apart, let heaven and hell suffer before I will eat in fear or sleep with these terrible dreams that he gets every night. But he's kind of contradicting himself there, really, isn't he? Because clearly he's suggesting that he is at the moment in fear. He is having these dreams, these terrible dreams. So when he says, oh, let the universe fall apart before that happens, actually he's contradicting himself because he is in fear and he is having these terrible dreams. And then these lines here, he's kind of repeating what Lady Macbeth said earlier, really. They're saying better to be with the dead, to be dead yourself, rather than torture yourself. I mean, this line here saying that he killed Duncan, and therefore put him to peace. Yeah, we say rest in peace. When you're dead, you're obviously at peace. And when he says to gain our peace, what he means there is that he thought he wanted to be king. Obviously, he's not really in peace. Okay, so he hasn't really got what he wanted in that sense. But he thought that by becoming king, he would be happy. Okay, so that's what these lines mean here, sort of repeating what Lady Macbeth said earlier. And then it just talks about Duncan, how Duncan is in his grave. And this is just poetic language here. Life's fitful fever, he sleeps well. In other words, he's dead. And treason has done its worst. So obviously, the treason is Macbeth's treason. And he's saying that nothing can now hurt Duncan. So this means not sword, not poison, not enemies in this country. Domestic means can be to do with home, but it also means to do with this country as opposed to foreign countries. Taxes, nothing can harm Duncan now because obviously he's dead. And then Lady Macbeth tries to comfort him, saying, "Come on, your face is looking worried. Can you cover up your worried look? try to be bright and jolly with your guests. And Macbeth says, okay, I'll do that, and you should do that as well. And he says, he reminds her, pay special attention to Banquo, both by kind of looking at him, being near him, and by talking to him. And basically here, he's saying that we are unsafe as long as we have to. So lave means wash. So this is just Shakespearean way of saying that we are unsafe as long as we have to keep flattering Banquo, okay? And we have to kind of put on a mask or a disguise to hide our true feelings. And Macbeth says, stop thinking like this. But Macbeth says, no, my mind is full of scorpions. So scorpions are spiders. Obviously, this is just a metaphor that he can't stop thinking about this. And he says to her, you know that Banquo and Clarence are still alive. And obviously, what he means is that the witch's prophecy that Clarence is going to, Banquo's children are going to become kings. And then this line is a bit confusing. You don't need to worry too much about it. It just means it's just poetic language, old language for that. Yes, they are alive, but nobody lives forever. And Macbeth says, yeah, that's true. They are attackable. So be jolly. And then these three lines here are just poetic ways of saying before nightfall. So before the beetle goes to Hecate's summons, all right, so the beetle is a nocturnal animal, okay? So before the beetle comes alive, and kind of sings his nightly song, if you like, okay, Run Night's Yawning Peal. So this is just poetic language for that before nightfall, a deed of dreadful note will be done. What do you think that means? What's terrible that's gonna happen? He's talking about Banquo's murder. Yeah, so he's saying before nightfall, Banquo is going to be killed, so implying that we won't then have to worry about anything. Actually, we know that he will start to worry about other things, but that's what he's saying here. And Lady Macbeth says, "What's going to happen?" And he says, "Be this line here." Now, when he calls her dearest Chuck, so Chuck is just a term of endearment, like darling or something. And this is interesting because sometimes people question whether Macbeth loves his wife or not. In particular, there's a line later on in the play which we'll examine. I think there's no doubt about it. If anything, he loves her too much. He's besotted with her. So besotted means when you love somebody too much. Anyway, so he's saying don't worry about it until you can applaud, until you can cheer the deed. And it's actually strange that he's saying it to her like this because at this stage we know that actually he's the one suffering. She's not really suffering that much. Later on, that's going to change, but this is quite strange that he's actually saying this. Anyway, then he said, "Come, ceiling night." So ceiling means covering. So now he's talking to the night. Do you remember that technique where you're talking to an object or somebody who's not there? It's a punctuation mark as well. It's called apostrophe. That's an advanced technique. You don't need to worry too much about that if that confuses you. And then this is all again just poetic Shakespearean language for he's saying to the night, come and scarf or cover up the day, tender eye of pitiful day. So this line, what this means is that normally when people do bad things, they do them at night. So during the day, they tend not to commit bad or criminal things. Okay, so that's why he's saying that in that sense, day is tender. It's safer. So come nighttime, and with thy bloody. So this line here is really just poetic way of saying that people can do bad things at night because obviously they can't be seen. It's easier to hide and run. And he's saying, so this line here, which is very confusing, he's talking about Banquo's hold on life. Okay, so he wants night to come so that the murderers can kill Banquo and Florence, separate Banquo's life from his body, so break that bond, which is what keeps Macbeth pale, keeps him worried. And now he says, light thickens. So again, this is now going into just repeating this idea of night coming so that Banquo can be murdered and flounced. So here he's kind of Shakespeare repeating some of these metaphors about night coming. Okay, so the crow is now will go home to the wood to rest for the night, and he's saying the good things of day start to sleep. Yeah, and the nocturnal creatures. So nocturnal means to do with nighttime. So the creatures that come out at night to do their to become predators, they start to wake up. Okay, so these are just metaphors for night coming along. And then he says to her, "Oh, you're." So remember, on stage he's talking, and she won't know what he's talking about. So the marvelous means that you're puzzled about what I'm saying, but don't worry, just wait. And then he says that. So this line means the bad things only become stronger by doing even more bad things. Now, that's what the line means. I think that's debatable whether that's true or not. Okay, we don't need to worry too much about that at this stage. And then he says, "So pray thee, go with me." So that's the end of that scene. Here are the key quotations for this scene. Okay, and here are some questions to test your knowledge. Okay, so if you can do those fairly easily, fine. If not, go back to the beginning of this bit of the video and revise until you can answer these questions easily. But we're going to move on. Actually, sorry. So you should stop the video here and answer these questions. I'm going to move on to the next slide now for the answers. Okay, so there are the answers. But we're going to now continue on to the next scene. Okay, so because that was a fairly short scene, we're going to do two scenes in this lesson. Actually, sorry. Yeah, that last scene was fairly short, but it's the next scene which is even shorter. So this next scene we're gonna get through quite quickly. Okay, the previous scene is probably more important in terms of understanding it and analyzing it. I mean, the next scene is also important, as you'll see in a minute, but it's quite short and you don't need to worry too much in terms of analyzing it. It's just important to know what happens and what it shows about how Macbeth is getting worse and worse, becoming more and more evil. So Act 3, Scene 3 is where Banquo is murdered, but his son Fleance escapes. So let's listen to that scene now.
But who did bid thee join us?
Macbeth.
Thee needs not our mistrust, since he delivers our offices and what we have to do to the direction just.
Then stand with us.
Aye.
The west yet glimmers with some streaks of day. Now spurs the lated traveller apace to gain the timely inn, and near approaches the subject of our watch.
Hark. I hear horses.
Then 'tis he. The rest that are within the note of expectation already are in the court.
Shh. His horses go about. Almost a mile. But he does usually, so all men do. From hence to the palace gate, make it their walk.
A light! A light!
'Tis he. Stand to it.
It will be rain tonight. Aye.
Let it come down. Century! Fly, good Fleance! Fly, fly, fly! Oh, miss! Who did strike out the light? Was not the way? There's but one down. The sun is fled.
We've lost best half of our affair.
Well, let's away and say how much is done.
Okay, so we don't need to worry too much about analyzing this scene, okay? The main thing is that you just need to know from a plot point of view that Banquo has been murdered, but that his son Clarence escapes. Obviously, this shows how evil Macbeth has become, that he's willing to murder his best friend and a child, a young man, a boy. Okay, we don't need to analyze the lines too much. Okay, so we're going to just skip through most of this, and yeah, basically, this is the only bit you really maybe need to think about. Okay, and so here, just one key quotation. Here's a question. I'm not gonna I haven't given you a written answer in the next slide. I'm going to just pause this video and think about this question here, okay? And then I'm going to tell you the answer in a minute. So pause the video, and then when you're ready, I'm going to give you some ideas. So obviously, in terms of techniques, we've got repetition. Hopefully you noticed that. There's also something called exclamation. So the word "oh" is an exclamation. It's an expression of feeling and usually goes with an exclamation mark, but not always actually. And what is the effect? Well, there's two levels to it. Obviously, to a large extent, it's simply the fact that the father, Banquo, is obviously the worst thing that can happen to a father is for the child to be killed. So he wants Clarence to run. So that's where the emotion is coming from. But there is a double layer here, isn't there? It's extra here because he knows that his children are meant to be kings, that Fleance one day will become king and his descendants will become kings. Okay, so there's a normal emotion of the father, but then there's this additional idea that he's he Banquo's children are going to be kings. Okay. All right. So hopefully that's a fairly kind of short video. We did two scenes in one. So as always, if you like this video, please don't forget to subscribe and to tell all your friends about it.